morning, this is Hannah here with Rundle's Urban Farm, and I am in our greenhouse about to bring you the first garden tour of the 2022 season. I am a little late getting going with the garden tours. We've had the garden planted for about a month. Normally we get things planted about mid-May, but this year things were really chilly, so we got the tomatoes planted at the end of May and the peppers planted at the beginning of June. It would seem that the plants are actually enjoying the later start to the season. They haven't had to deal with as much cold weather and have taken off really readily. So I hope you enjoy today's garden tour, and in the coming weeks I'll explain more about the different varieties that we've got going, but this is just an overview of the different crops and where everything's planted. So enjoy! Okay, the shadows are really awful right now, but I wanted to get in a quick garden tour while I had a few minutes. Obviously, this is the first one of the year. However, it is late June, so everything is quite well established at this point, even though we got a later start to the year. Right here in these black plastic containers we have potatoes, and we are trying out growing them in containers, which I haven't done before. Honestly, I haven't even grown potatoes since I was a kid, so we'll see how those do. Then we've got just our flowers, and right here we have carrots and cabbage. The cabbage was planted early in April. I already harvested 2 of them that were pretty small. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of problems with cabbage moths. The caterpillars like to eat the cabbage leaves, and I haven't figured out a really good method to prevent that at this time. So they are just getting obliterated. Then we've got our onions here, and these I started from seed and planted out in early May probably. And then we've got peppers, and the peppers just went in at the beginning of the month. And then we've got behind that our tomatoes, and the tomatoes went in at the very end of May. Things got going a lot later here than they usually do. It was pretty cold for several weeks. And then here we've got beans, and these are the main ones that actually germinated. Again, things were really cold here, and so it took a while for things to warm up enough that the beans would actually germinate. So I need to actually go through and replant some of those. Here at the end, we've got our squash, and they are really enjoying the weather we're having right now. They are taking off and about to explode. It's kind of hard to see back there. So that's our squash. And then over here are irises, chamomile, poppies, and sunflowers. And I don't think you'll be able to tell on the video, but I'm trying a different method of gardening down here, where I'm using essentially a raised bed that doesn't have like walls around it. It's called hugelkultur, and basically you dig a trench, you bury some wood, and then on top of that you place compost, and on top of that dirt, and then you plant your whatever you're growing and then mulch that heavily. And the idea is that it will retain more water and more heat and allow the plants to grow more vigorously, which it seems to be working. You can see this poppy just bloomed this morning. We've got chamomile and snapdragons and sunflowers and marigolds. And then here again is our squash. We'll go in and take a look at the back row of the garden. So we've got tomatoes all down the line here, and we've got smaller tomato up front. We've got basil, and then there's a little bit of lettuce growing back between the tomatoes, and then in front here I've got beets. I've got red, I think they're Detroit red beets, and Burpee's golden beets. And the golden ones look like they're spaced out a little better than the red ones. The red ones just went crazy. And then down this line, we've got lots of peppers. We've got some bell peppers here at the end. And then this is King of the North. And last year, these ones didn't perform all that well, but this, so far of all the peppers that's planted out in the garden, seems to be the healthiest. So obviously the King of the North is doing well in the cooler weather that we're having. These are Nepali orange peppers, and the reason I got these is because I thought they were Nepalese bell peppers, but these are different. They're a hot pepper, and there's not a lot of information online as to how spicy they are, so that might be a little bit of a Russian roulette game later on this year when they are ripe. And they have been extraordinarily healthy and thriving even in this cooler weather, which I would have thought, being from Nepal, they would need a little bit warmer weather. I guess it's a mountainous climate though, so maybe it's similar to where it is here. And then we've got Anaheims down here that, despite their appearance, seem to be actually doing okay. And then a bit of cilantro, and right here, these two tomatoes in the front are dwarf tomatoes, and they're not supposed to get all that big and crazy. This one does seem to be a little bit crazy. This one seems to be a little bit more of what I would have expected from a dwarf tomato. And then here is zucchini, and weeds have taken over this spot that is supposed to be carrots, and I probably need to replant some of those. And we've got some beans and tomatoes and nasturtiums back here. More carrots, a bug-eaten cabbage, basil, carrots, and another zucchini. And I will, oh, and then down the line here, just the inside view of all the tomatoes. And the tomatoes are doing really well. They just took off. I think planting them later actually made a really positive impact. They were just able to take off and settle in right away rather than being stunted by cold weather. Here we're also trying a new garden space for our cucumbers. I've got cucumbers, marigolds, and dill planted here. And the idea is that the cucumbers will grow up this trellis here from both sides. And these are felt bags. I just got a heavy-duty felt from the fabric store and sewed up a bag and filled it with dirt. And here we have our tomato growing system, or sorry, cucumbers. And they seem to be doing really well. These ones in particular are quite happy. They get a little bit more shade than the regular garden, but I think the added warmth of the patio makes up for that. So we will see how that does. I'm hoping that before too long, this whole trellis will be covered in cucumbers. And over here at the entrance to the greenhouse, we have carrots. These were planted early, probably March, or could have been late March. And then they were started in the greenhouse, but the garden bed had issues with fungus gnats, so we moved that out of the greenhouse, and they didn't fare any worse for the wear. The carrots are growing quite nicely. And then in here, this has been our new addition this year, is our greenhouse. And we're actually growing quite a few things in the greenhouse all summer long. And we've got some dwarf tomatoes here that are far bigger at this point than any of our other tomatoes. And I expect this one to produce first out of all the tomatoes we're growing. This is a yellow cherry. It's called Dwarf Smiley Eagle, and it's a newer introduction that's only been made available in seed catalogs as of this year. And then this one is a larger paste type dwarf tomato. And then in here we've got watermelon, which we've never had good success with. So we're hoping they do well in here. We've got eggplants, which are already doing so much better than the ones we grew in the garden last year. We've got sweet potatoes, which is another new endeavor for us. They don't do well in cool climates, so we are just growing them in the greenhouse to see how they do. More melons. And then up here, because the weather was so cold, it took us forever to actually get the peppers planted. And then we ended up keeping a lot of them in the greenhouse, chiefly because this pepper was doing so well. It had these fruits on it, probably started 2 or 3 months ago, and it seemed to be thriving in the greenhouse, so we left a lot of other peppers in here too. You can see more up here. And then I've got more sweet potatoes that I didn't have space for at the moment. And our cabbage starts, these are for our fall crop, and they won't be planted until out in the garden until later in July. And then down here we've got lettuce greens. I think I will be tearing those out shortly and just planting in some melons or some of these leftover things that didn't fit in my pots before. So that is our greenhouse, which is a very exciting thing that we've added this year. Up front, we've got our 3 raised beds. I'll try to get some video before the traffic gets too bad. This year we've got garlic primarily growing in these beds. There's some volunteer cilantro, which is bolting now. And then of course we've got our strawberries in the middle bed. This is approximately 50 strawberry plants, and you can tell they're a bit crowded. And then up here we've got onions and lettuce, and the lettuce we used a winter sowing method, which did quite well, seeing as this lettuce is very well established compared to the stuff I planted in the spring in the back garden. Thank you for watching today's garden tour, and I will hopefully be back next week with an update. Things have been pretty busy here on the farm. Hence the extra couple of weeks it's taken me to actually get a video up. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to providing you with more gardening tips and tours in the coming weeks. Bye.